Xbox is becoming a lot more competitive these days when it comes to sales on our Xbox consoles, and this week they've decided to drop some games down to their lowest prices that we've ever seen before. Do be aware though that some of them are only down in price for the next 48 hours, and do stay tuned as well for an insane deal that is 90% off later in this video, as it's a massive AAA title. Remember though, before I do begin, I do give away a free Xbox game on these sales videos every single week. All you have to do is just comment below and you're going to be automatically entered. I'm going to give a big congratulations to last week's winner. I mean, my comment is pretty self-explanatory as you have a ton of cracking games to play right now, and those Resident Evil games are just utter fire. Just hit me up though on our Xbox Nation Discord server with the link down below, and I'll get that game right over to you. With that though, let's dive into the games you need to grab for this week. First up today, we have a game that really heavily went under the radar upon its official release, but I know many who have actually played it absolutely fell in love with it, including me. Nobody Wants to Die is a detective noir thriller that's set in a grim cyberpunk New York, where death isn't permanent thanks to body swapping technology. You play as Detective James Kara, and then you're tasked with solving a brutal murder tied to corruption and immortality. What really did set this one apart though is its investigation system, as you'll be scanning clues, piecing together scenes, and then unraveling a layered narrative. The game is really heavily inspired here by the movie Blade Runner and narrative games as well like Observer and Firewatch, so if any of those games are your cup of tea, you're gonna love this one. This game is now down in price by a whopping 75% discount, making it such a great time to grab it, especially as this one clocks in at just £5, and that is now the lowest price we've ever seen for this one so far. I know that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 will be landing onto Xbox Game Pass as of the 3rd of March. However, if you don't have a Game Pass subscription or would just like to own the game forever, then yes, it is down by a beefy discount for this week. This one though, of course, follows Henry of Skalitz as he follows Hans Capon across the medieval realm of Bohemia, and that's in search of his father's sword, and as always, he will get embroiled in all sorts of war, political intrigue, and so much more. The game is just so utterly beautiful and so well crafted. It was even my personal game of the year in 2025 next to the phenomenal Clair Obscur. I don't really know how Warhouse have managed to craft such an in-depth RPG with solid combat, outstanding visuals that really depict medieval times, and so much more. They really are just masters of their craft. I cannot wait to see what their next project is, but until then, please pick this one up as it's probably one of the best RPGs that's ever been made. Metal Eden is a striking newest entry into the sci-fi action genre. This one was an atmospheric blend of combat, narrative, and exploration, and it was all kind of wrapped up in a dystopian world, and it really gave me some massive Doom vibes. In this one though, you play as a soldier turned rebel, fighting to reclaim a planet consumed by its own creations. The gameplay is a massive highlight as well, and it has to be if it really takes inspiration from games like Doom, so you can fully expect stuff like lovely balance of fluid melee combat with tactical shooting, and it really does demand your quick reflexes and adaptability. At just under 12 quid after a 65% discount, this is actually the best price we've seen for it since its launch, and it's just fantastic value here for any amount of quality and also content. I absolutely love my time with this game upon its release, and it's just such a shame it went so under the radar for so many gamers out there. Many of us are still waiting for the Elder Scrolls 6, and whilst that could still probably be many years off at this point, we've been scratching to find alternatives out there. One game I came across last year on a whim though, and absolutely adored, do check out my review if you haven't already, was Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. To say I was impressed is a real understatement, as Awakened Realms have absolutely nailed what we wanted in a Skyrim-like RPG. This is more Skyrim though, crossed with Dark Souls, as it does have some pretty good difficulty to it, but then it's backed up by one of the most interesting locations and also time periods. This one though is based on Arthurian legend and is incredibly dark, but to accompany that is some insanely sharp writing, brilliant quest design, and just a level of detail that you don't see in many RPGs. It's so highly rated for a reason, and you can now try it as it's 30% off, bringing it down to just £25. There was a real quiet beauty when I played Windbound, and although it's one that has been out for many years at this point, I know many of you probably still haven't tried this gem before. There are no constant markers or even quest logs in this one. Essentially, you're just a lone sailor on an ocean full of secrets and the wind pushing you towards discovery. You have to craft things, you then have to explore and ultimately survive, and it borrows from that sense of solitude from games like Wind Waker, but then pairs it with grounded survival mechanics. The art direction also glows as well. I actually really enjoyed it, and although it's not massively tuned for some insane detail, every island does hide a small mystery to it or even a dangerous beast. It's a very meditative experience, and I think that's why I was so drawn to it in the first place when I grabbed it about 5 years ago so now. Normally it's a very modest indie as well, but it's down to just £3.59 after a staggering 85% discount. This is roughly the same price as a Costa coffee these days, so if you ask me, that's easily worth grabbing. If there's one thing that everyone loves, it's just crewing a pirate ship and then causing chaos with your friends. If you then put your ship in space, it can only improve things until you're vented into the vacuum at least. One game that actually launched all the way back in July now was a sort of Sea of Thieves in space stylization game called Wildgate, and it's so criminally underrated and you need to grab it as soon as possible. In Wildgate, essentially you and your crew of fellow space pirates will have to race rival ships to then be the first to claim the artifact, and this is a relic during the galaxy's nastiest evildoers to this treacherous sector full of life-threatening cosmic perils. Of course, because you are pirates, that race for the relic isn't going to be a friendly one, and you can expect some very over-the-top and really fun combat scenarios. It's just so much fun. I really hope it gets more eyes on it thanks to the sale, and it's totally one you need to try out if you haven't done so already. There is a reason that this next game gets brought up time and time again, especially when someone asks for a proper RPG. Divinity Original Sin 2 is one of the best RPGs you can grab on the market, and the fact it is still a go-to game for many people out there years later really does say it all. You can completely derail quests, turn on companions, solve encounters creatively, or even start absolute chaos just to see what happens. The combat though, as you're probably well aware of what's being shown on screen, is turn-based, but it's deeply tactical, and it's all kind of built around positioning and elemental interactions that do reward your experimentation rather than brute force. What makes it really special though is honestly the writing of its characters, as they feel so layered and not just there to hand you objectives, instead they're really there to flesh out the overall world. It's a very dense RPG. It's slightly overwhelming at first for sure, but once it clicks, it's really hard to step away from it. This isn't going to be a quick weekend game, it's going to be a full commitment for multiple hundreds of hours, and at just £12.50 for the definitive edition, it's genuinely one of the best RPG sales on the store right now. If you remember, I managed to review Echoes of the End when it officially launched onto Xbox a few months back now. However, since that initial release, the devs have now overhauled the game completely, and it's a fantastic single player game that you certainly need to try out. In this one, you play as Rin, a powerful vestige that is born with an affinity for what remains of an ancient magic, and when her brother is finally captured and war threatens to engulf her homeland, you must rise to defend it before it's consumed by conflict. This is a great AA game, and you can see that it is clearly made with some love from the Icelandic team. It plays a lot like God of War 2018 but at home, and I do mean that as a compliment. I found out that I had a great combo of puzzles and combat with some light exploration for optional lore entries. It's fairly linear, which I actually really came to prefer, especially as I've gotten older. I haven't had a chance to delve into the enhanced edition update that much, but apparently the performance is now pretty rock solid and the combat is way more improved. Ride 5 is a very different motorcycle racing game that I ever expected upon grabbing it on release, and that's because it's all centered around multiple types of motorcycles across lots of varied locations compared to the likes of the MotoGP franchise. This entry in particular though has a really good career mode that can provide you with many hours of enjoyment in itself. You have the chance to collect also over 200 bikes which have been painstakingly modelled in some amazing detail. On top of that, you can also ride them on realistic near perfect models of some of the best circuits in the world. There are actually a few circuits which I've ridden, and I can say they really gave me goosebumps of how accurate they really are. It won't appeal to everyone though, especially if you do prefer arcade style races, but that's not what this game's really aiming for. At £7.50, it's an absolute steal, especially for any of you who actually enjoy learning tracks and mastering those intense mechanics. 7 Days to Die is definitely one of my favourite games of all time. It really touches on many things I love about gaming into one experience, that being killing zombies, survival mechanics, scavenging, resource management, building, crafting, and even exploring. The survival world feels utterly dangerous but rewarding. Every decision really matters as well leading up to the Blood Moon days, so building and upgrading a base that actually has to work against hordes of zombies really never gets old. I've always been a huge fan of zombie games as I grew up loving COD Zombies and Dead Island, and this game really does scratch that itch, especially as I'm no longer the biggest fan of COD Zombies, especially in the direction it's gone these days. 7 Days to Die reflects progression and creativity better than almost any other zombie game I've played, and it feels very immersive and captures a true survival world really well. It's now down by 45% off, and that's totally worth it, especially at that low price tag. If you're wanting a decent simulation game, then we have Police Simulator Patrol Officers, and this one lets you join the police force of a fictitious American city called Brighton. You will start with citating violations and giving out parking tickets, and then work your way towards shouldering more responsibilities. What was really cool about this entry though is it also includes a dynamic traffic system that organically creates the traffic flow and even car accidents, as well as emergency situations that will randomly pop up during your shift. You'll have to be ready to react at a moment's notice and make sure to keep the people in this city ultra safe. Again, this one has some very positive reviews over on Steam and also Xbox already, with many calling this the best police sim they've ever played, even though it's going to be slightly arcadey and does lack a little bit of content. You can actually grab this sim game right now for 10 quid, and I reckon there's a great time to do so as well, as I reckon this one might leave Xbox Game Pass fairly soon. A very popular game that actually arrived onto Xbox pretty recently was Satisfactory, and this is pure optimization obsession, and now I really understand why many are insanely addicted to this one. You essentially land on an alien planet, you then start mining basic resources, and before you know it, you're building conveyor belts that stretch across entire landscapes like some industrial masterpiece. What made it so addictive isn't just going to be its action, it really is the efficiency. You'll constantly think about whether you can improve things and then rebuild entire production lines just to shave off seconds of your output. It's weirdly calming and incredibly satisfying when everything runs perfectly. There's even some exploration elements, there's even some light combat elements, but let's be honest, it's all going to be about that factory elements. At just under £27, it's not a bargain bin cheap experience for this week, but if you do enjoy problem solving and watching systems come together, this can absolutely consume your life in the best way, and this is actually the first discount we've seen for this game as well. If you're a fan of Souls-like games but want one of them set in an open world, then Ashen is a must-play. This open world action RPG took everything that we love about games like Dark Souls, with its tight combat, stamina-based fights, and even deep lore, but then added a unique cooperative twist to it instead. So instead of a traditional multiplayer experience, the game will seamlessly introduce real players into your world as nameless warriors, and then offer you aid in battles or exploration without voice chat or direct interaction. I will say that exploration is going to be a huge part of this experience, with a lot of mystical ruins, eerie landscapes, and incredibly lore-rich dungeons just waiting to be uncovered. I personally really love the mystery and immersion of Ashen, and there's a great standpoint as well before you go into sort of the Remnant games, as this one is actually set beforehand. If you enjoy challenging yet fair combat with expansive exploration and a beautifully crafted world, Ashen is a must-play, especially for that low price tag. Right, imagine classic beat-em-up games, but now make everyone a skyscraper-sized monster and chuck in some kaijus into the mix, and that's Dawn of the Monsters. This one's loud, colourful, and completely aware of how ridiculous it is, and I had the chance to review this one when it originally launched over on Google Stadia, way before its Xbox launch. You're smashing cities, trading blows with giant creatures, and then chaining attacks together in gloriously chaotic fashion. It's not trying to be a deep game, but instead it's trying to be fun over the sort of 8 to 10ish hours of playtime. There is some progression here as well, with some cool unlocks and enough variety to really keep it interesting, especially in the court modes. I do feel it's something that you'd play on a weekend, and it's one of the better beat 'em up games out there, and at just under £7, it's perfectly priced for what it is. Now, my ultimate deal of the week has to be for one of the wildest discounts I've seen recently, and it's an immediate purchase if you don't already own it. Dead Island 2 Ultimate Edition is currently listed for £5.79, and that is borderline absurd for the amount of content you're getting. The game itself is unapologetically gory and over the top, as it's set in a sun-soaked version of Los Angeles that somehow makes zombie dismemberment look colourful. The combat is the real hook, as every weapon feels weighty, and that flesh system makes the hits feel properly brutal. It's not trying to reinvent the storytelling elements, it is about satisfying crunchy combat and just chaotic encounters. Of course, the Ultimate Edition does throw in some extra content as well, and it makes it feel like an absolute steal. I mean, this edition is actually cheaper than the base game. I don't know if that's a mistake on the Xbox store, but do make sure to grab it as soon as possible. What game looks great to you in this week's Xbox store sale? You'll have to let me know down below, and if you managed to pick any of these up, do smash that like button as well if you did enjoy this video, and do subscribe as well for more Xbox content on a daily basis. If you do want to see some more amazing Xbox content here on the channel though, do check out the video on screen now, as I recently had a chance to preview Aphelion. This is the next game coming from Don't Nod, and I tell you what, it's looking mighty impressive.